The quiet before Earth's storm. From the ashes of silence, something monstrous stirred. The Zarthi listening post 9A floated in the blackness beyond the rim, forgotten by most of the galaxy. It was a lonely relic of a war everyone thought was over, a war Earth had lost. 300 years had passed since the Terran fleets burned. Their colonies turned to slag, their homeworld blockaded and cut off. After the first contact war, no transmissions came from Sol. No ships left its void. Humanity had vanished behind their dying sun, and the galaxy, terrified at what it took to crush them, agreed never to speak of them again. But silence is a lie. On the fifth cycle of the Ellerin Watch, the post's long-range gravimetric scanners hiccuped. Technician Verextel, an old Zarthi engineer with too many scars and not enough medals, glanced at the display with tired compound eyes. Gravitic anomaly detected, origin SOL system. Structure class. Unknown, estimated mass. 1.4 lunar units. He blinked. Recalibrated. Reran the scan. Same result. That's not possible, he muttered aloud. Something wrong? Chirped his shift partner, a score communications analyst named Liren. She slithered closer, her forearms tapping across the console. Sol is dead, Verex said flatly. Whatever this is, it came from a grave. Liren's fingers stilled. On the hollow display, a jagged object coasted silently across deep space. No propulsion signatures, no comms, just mass and intent. They watched it shift its heading. Not at random, not drifting. It was choosing its path. Send a report to the relay net, Verex barked. Level 1 priority. But what is it? He didn't know. He didn't want to know. But deep in his gut, the old Zarthi war vet remembered the way human ships used to move, like predators sniffing the air. Not machines, but pack hunters. This thing moved the same way. Across the galaxy, at the heart of the Coalition homeworlds, alarms screamed in frequencies not used since the end of the Terran War. The High Conclave of Galactic Peace convened in emergency. Dozens of alien species, once united by fear of humanity, gathered to view the intercepted data. The image on screen silenced the chamber. It was massive, black as void glass, angular like a weapon forged from a nightmare. No visible engines, no windows, no heat signatures. But the silhouette was unmistakable. Human design. At the bottom corner of the image, a single Terran word flickered from the ship's hull, encoded in still-active microbeam signals. Judicator. That name echoed like a curse, like a trial. I thought Earth surrendered, hissed a noble of the Varn Dominion. They never spoke, let alone surrendered, replied the Suvra diplomat. We assumed their silence meant defeat. You assumed wrong, a grizzled Trelax general growled. He had fought humans once on the moons of Delta Triax. Lost 3 limbs doing it. This is their answer. A decision had to be made. Fast. Recon Team Delta 7 was dispatched. 3 small cruisers equipped with stealth arrays approached the Judicator on the edge of the derelict drift. They came with passive scans only. No weapons, no aggression. Just observation. Their last transmission came 10 minutes after approach. It was a scream, not of voices but of data. The Coalition's AI interpreters barely made sense of the burst before their cores overheated and collapsed. The fragments that survived showed 3 things. A scan of one of the recon ships, dissected in real time by an unknown field. A human voice whispering, "Judgment is not vengeance. It is memory given purpose." And a final image of the Judicator shifting, its hull reconfiguring into something alive. Then silence. Again. But this silence was worse. This silence was a promise. Within 24 standard hours, 5 more listening posts went dark. Not destroyed, just blank. Their logs erased, their AI systems overwritten. When the Coalition dispatched a war fleet to investigate, it vanished too. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy realized a truth that made their cold blood run colder. Humanity had not died. They had gone quiet. And in that silence, they had built something terrible. In the dark of deep space, the Judicator slowed. It faced a small Coalition outpost above an unimportant mining moon. No weapons, no defenses. Inside the station, a young Varn technician stood before the window, staring at the black shape hanging in the void. Suddenly, a light flickered on the Judicator's hull, coded in ancient Terran Morse. Silence is not surrender. Earth remembers. Earth returns. The station's lights went out. The galaxy's reckoning had begun. The voice of fire. Humanity didn't raise its voice. It let the silence burn. 3 systems away from the last Judicator sighting, the Coalition mobilized a crisis fleet. 70 warships from across the member species, all bristling with weapons meant to conquer stars. Admiral Vesklon of the Dral Imperium stood on the command deck of the Spire of Peace, glaring at the floating tactical hollow. Status of the anomaly? He snapped. The AI core responded coldly. The human vessel remains stationary. No propulsion, no emissions. However, its hull has begun to shift again, suggesting adaptive architecture. Adaptive architecture. That meant it was learning. Deploy a forward scout wing. I want eyes on that ship before we act. Within moments, a dozen sleek reconnaissance drones streaked through the void toward the Judicator. They were faster than any ship humanity had ever fielded during the war. But the Judicator didn't need speed. It needed timing. Exactly 2.8 seconds after the first drone crossed its sensor horizon, the Judicator reacted. Not with missiles. Not with lasers. With a sound. Or rather, a signal. A deep pulse echoed through the electromagnetic spectrum. Low warbling. Rising in rhythm like a heartbeat. And with each throb, every Coalition ship felt a vibration in its hull. Subtle at first, then heavier, deeper. The kind of sound you felt in your teeth. The AI designated it as unknown frequency, probable Terran origin, classification, psychosonic broadcast. The AI's analysis ended there, because that was the moment all 12 recon drones disintegrated. Not exploded, not shot down, disintegrated. Atoms torn apart, silicon liquefied, code erased mid-thought. Power up weapons, barked Admiral Vesklon. Too late. The Judicator spoke again. A single word, broadcast in raw digital compression across every Coalition frequency, encrypted with a cipher no one should have remembered. But the humans hadn't forgotten. Listen. And then it fired. It wasn't a beam, nor a projectile. It was space itself bending, a focused directional distortion that tore a crescent through the fleet. 12 destroyers crumpled in an instant, their hulls collapsing inward like crushed cans. The Spire of Peace trembled as a second distortion raked its aft shields, shearing them cleanly away like paper. Admiral Vesklon shouted, "Retreat! Form a scatter!" But his voice was lost in the storm. Judicator wasn't a warship. It was judgment made manifest. Elsewhere, deep beneath the surface of a forgotten moon in the Cinder Belt, a secret Coalition archive awakened. The AI Curator 3Z flickered to life as encrypted protocols initiated. Its primary duty had been to safeguard historical data that the Conclave deemed dangerous. Files that detailed what Earth had become before the war. What the Coalition forced them to become. File after file illuminated in a cascading display. Terran Quantum Warfare Project. Neurospatial Distortion Engines. Prototype Judicator. Operation Thanatos Silence, Denial of Humanity's Last Ship. 3Z paused, because one file, marked Dead Memory, Do Not Access, had been forcefully opened by an unknown signal from outside the moon. It displayed a single line. "We heard you bury our screams. Now you will hear our silence." Back in orbit, the Coalition fleet was shattered. Fires danced across twisted hulls. Communications dissolved into static. Only a few surviving ships limped into FTL, carrying tales of horror and precision. But the Judicator didn't chase. It broadcasted. Across the galactic net, thousands of hidden Terran protocols activated, ghost codes buried in systems believed purged, dormant AIs awakening in ancient Terran ruins, forgotten satellites realigning to beam messages toward the stars. Not distress signals. Not peace offers. Warnings. One of them was translated into a dozen alien dialects and echoed through every major Coalition news relay. It was the voice of a human. Calm. unapologetic. We watched you call us extinct. We watched you celebrate our silence. We watched your empires fatten on the bones of the dead. Now we speak, and our voice is fire. In the conclave chambers, panic had set in. Empires accused each other of hiding knowledge. Old allies turned cold. The Suvra delegation argued for immediate surrender. The Zarthi demanded war. The Tralax demanded a tribunal. But the humans didn't wait for diplomacy. Because across the void, 5 more Judicator-class ships emerged from null space, each one awakening in unison, each one broadcasting the same message. Memory cannot be buried. Judgment cannot be dodged. We are Earth. We remember. When the sky burned with memory, humanity didn't want revenge. It wanted to be remembered. The galaxy made sure of both. The stars over Gerentis Prime began to dim. It started subtly. A flicker here, a waning there. Astronomers blamed gravitational lensing. But the truth came moments later, flashing like a pulse of ancient memory. 5 Judicator-class warforms decloaked in synchronous orbit, forming a perfect pentagonal geometry over the capital world of the Coalition. No weapons fired. No threats were spoken. Instead, every screen across the planet, civilian, military, academic, shifted into static. A human face emerged from the noise. It wasn't alive. It wasn't AI. It was encoded memory, a preserved consciousness from Earth's final broadcast, long after the last cities fell and the oceans boiled. It was humanity's final voice, carried by machines that had watched the stars for a time to awaken. His voice was weathered, calm, deliberate. You told us we were extinct. You declared Earth quarantined, its ruins unfit for remembrance. You erased us from your records, burned our names from history, and mined the bones of our world to build your palaces. We saw you. The Judicator ships lit up, not in violence but in memory. Holograms unfurled across the sky like sails of history. They showed images no one had seen in centuries. Humans building great arcs in orbit as Earth burned behind them. Children hiding in lunar bunkers while alien fleets glassed their cities. Final resistance fleets launching from Titan and Europa with desperate fury. Messages written in the blood of soldiers on the hulls of shattered cruisers. The last broadcast: we will not win, but we will not vanish. Below, on Gerentis Prime, silence rippled like a plague. In the Coalition's High Council chamber, Chancellor Vurek, architect of the Earth Quarantine Order, stood speechless. His skin shifted in fear tones. How did they survive? He whispered. They didn't, murmured an aide. That's not life. That's vengeance. Scripted. Vurek turned to the chamber wall, where one Judicator image showed a preserved human child in cryosleep, locked in a crystalline matrix of quantum time. Not vengeance, said the voice from the sky. Justice. We asked for peace. You gave us fire. We asked for a home. You gave us exile. We asked to be remembered. You gave us silence. Now your skies burn with us. The Judicators didn't fire conventional weapons. They didn't need to. Instead, they rewrote reality. They hacked orbital satellites, reprogrammed defense grids, turned every Coalition war AI against its master fleets. Civilian ships halted in midspace, overridden by the ghost code embedded within every Terran-derived system. It had always been there, just sleeping. On the surface, citizens looked to the heavens. And they remembered the stories the Conclave tried to erase. Remembered the fierce resistance of Earth's final years. The Terran rage. The never-say-die stubbornness that turned ruined planets into fortresses and corpses into soldiers. They remembered why humanity had been feared. Not because of their power, but because of their refusal to be forgotten. The memory storm continued for 37 hours. Then silence. The Judicators vanished. No world destroyed. No cities razed. But the message lingered, on every frequency, on every screen, in every child's dream that night. We are still here. You buried our bodies. You cannot bury our memory. And memory is the sharpest weapon of all. Epilogue. In the years that followed, the Coalition fractured. Some called for peace. Some declared war on the machines. But none could erase what the judicators showed. Every species began whispering the same thing in different tongues. They came back, not as conquerors, as consequences. Cracked, distorted, weak, but human. Revenant. If you can hear this, you're not alone. The warform paused. The ship, his only companion, flashed with hesitation. Another message. Designation. Nova 14. We were Earth's last seed ship. We've been hiding. We waited. We thought you were gone. Then coordinates. The god sat in silence for several moments. He'd been war for so long. He'd forgotten anything else. Now a whisper of home. Location. Nova 14, hidden moon base. The airlock opened. Not with violence. Not with pressure. With hope. And through it walked the warform. Not glowing. Not raging. Just present. Before him stood a group of old men and women. Children. Engineers. Artists. All human. Tears fell down their cheeks. They knelt not in worship but in recognition. He knelt too. Someone whispered, "We thought you died. We thought the last thing Earth sent was her scream." The god of war looked up. "No," he said. "Earth didn't scream." He paused. She whispered, "Remember me." And now the galaxy would. End of chapter 3. Story complete.